How's it going, y'all? Welcome to the Run It Again podcast. I'm Zach Smith. This is Daniel Lawrenson. And today we're going to be talking about regrets.
Except you just used my Christian name. I'm going by Dan now, so.
Okay, this is Dan. But we are talking about regrets. So Dan, you want to kick us off with some of your regrets?
Oh man, you're tossing the big guns to me.
Going first, buddy.
I think we need to pick a lighter topic. I think I regret not sticking up for myself in adolescence when I believe that I had the right to.
What do you mean by that?
So when I was growing up, I lived in a very strict household, very conservative, very like, hey, you obey parents and authority no matter what, and you cannot think for yourself.
Right.
And reasoning with authority netted you zero results. It was just always obey. And so for me, I always acquiesced. I was afraid of discipline more than I was not standing up for myself. And so like in high school, like I let myself become abused and harassed. And I quit something that I loved. I quit swim team. Like I loved that so much and I was good at it, but right. I quit because I was being bullied so badly. And I had all the means to stand up for myself and dish that back. Right. And defend myself. And I didn't because I was so afraid of authority and consequences, because I lived in a world where it didn't matter if you started the fight, like if you participated in the fight, like you were held in equal judgment right. and consequence as the initiator of that fight, which is not how the real world works at all. No, like if you become an adult, yeah. like completely different.
If you get assaulted, like the cop is gonna, maybe the cop arrests both of you, but like just because they don't exactly know what the situation was. But as soon as like that's sussed out, yeah, and witnesses will be like, no, like he hit him, then like yeah. that guy gets slapped with like fines and jail time, and like you're exactly right. It's so weird that in a high school, middle school setting, it's like you're equally at fault if you participate in a fight at all. And it's like you said, like that's not how the adult world works. Like,
correct.
That's probably because they just wanted to discourage any form of like that kind of fighting. But like yeah. What that leads to is people being afraid to stick up for themselves. And it's like, no, that's not how that works. Like yeah. you should feel comfortable standing up for yourself and doing the appropriate thing. Like, don't escalate, obviously, but like being able to stand up for yourself, you should be like, that's, and yeah. I completely agree. And I think that makes total sense. So like you were bullied and you felt like you couldn't stand up for yourself, and therefore you dropped out of swim team, which you, by your own admission, and you were quite good at it.
Yeah, I was really good at it. And I think if I learned a few years ago, like I was wrapping up my degree, like I learned about it's Kohlberg's theory of moral development, and there are 6 stages to it, broken up into like 3 main stages. But the first one, it's essentially about moral development over time, and as you mature and grow, you reach a higher stage. So at that first couple stages, as a toddler, as a young child, you're learning basic rules and authority. You're obeying and acquiescing to authority literally just out of your own self-interest. Literally like, hey, I want to avoid a consequence, and so I'm going to do X or Y, right? As you progress into kind of like the middle stage 3 and 4 of moral development, you start to understand why the rules are in place. You start maybe even enforcing those rules. You understand that a society runs on structure and rule enforcing, essentially. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people stop there, and a lot of like my childhood like stopped there. And I wish that I was taught like the highest stages of moral development in high school and even in middle school, which is like you start to understand that as soon as rules get in the way of the protections that they're trying to meet, mm-hmm. they can be broken. Like you can break, absolutely. Like if a rule is in place that is causing damage or is getting in the way of itself, it can be broken. And it works.
Do you have like an example of that?
Like we just talked about, like like that middle stage of moral development would tell you that if you get hit or punched in the face, mm-hmm. like you just need to report that person, or you need to withdraw, you need to run.
Right.
And just get yourself out of the situation.
Right.
And it would tell you that if you fought back, you are now just on equal footing with that person.
Morally,
correct.
Yeah. So you should. So getting out of what you say the middle stage and going into the higher stage is understanding that yes, the rules say all fighting is bad in like high school and middle school, but you're saying like this system allows for you to be like, this rule itself doesn't make any sense in this particular setting, and therefore I should be able to supersede that rule to give myself the defense I need.
Correct. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And the highest stage is really also setting for yourself like your own set of moral principles, which is why, I mean, it's just a theory and a model to help you like understand ethics, but
right.
Because it can be so varied and sometimes manipulated, but it's like really at the highest level, you have your own set of personal values and what you think is right and wrong. And it allows you to be really flexible and dynamic with like traditional rules in a traditional system. Like you're still bearing in mind all of the rules of society,
right?
But like it just gives you a bigger box to work inside of, and I was never allowed that, and it cost me a lot, and that was my biggest regret.
Do you think that system of thinking could lead to bad actors choosing to follow some rules and disregard others just because they're like, oh, I'm more evolved, like like people think that like they can take a situation into their own hands when they really should leave it to like the authorities to like deal with, like that. Wouldn't that lead to like, couldn't you like have a framework, that framework lead to like vigilantism of like, I don't think the police are doing a good job, therefore I'm going to take the law in my own hands and like I can go kill this person because they did something wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm going to start a GoFundMe for my Project Batman. Wholeheartedly agree.
I'm yeah, but like you can see how, but that's the same with anything. Anything can be manipulated,
correct,
to justify a bad actor's end goal. So it's like, I don't think, and I'm not like saying it's a bad system because of that. I'm just thinking of like the broader scope of like what this would look like if everyone embraced it. Because I feel like a lot of people just follow rules because they are told that they're rules.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes that leads to good outcomes.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to know why you need to have your tray table up and your seat in the floor upright position on a plane. You just need to do it because the flight attendant tells you so.
You might get to Albuquerque safely, though.
Like, okay. Okay, Weird Al. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, there are some rules that, like, you don't need to question them.
Yeah, correct.
You just need to follow them because, like, we're all a collective trying to get to one spot.
Yeah. And that's why, the whole model is really difficult because of every pro and con of it is very situational.
Sure. Well, so as is life.
Yeah, and I think that's really the goal of it, is just, like, use your best judgment and ultimately do what you believe in. Do what you believe is right in that situation.
Right.
It might backfire. Like, you might fall on your ass. You might wind up in jail, like, worst case scenario.
But you would hope that, like, you would have, the law is ultimately on your side because...
Correct.
I guess it just frees you up to act in a way that you think is morally correct. Mm-hmm. And as long as you are doing that in good faith, then you're probably going to be okay.
Exactly, yeah.
And so it just lets you, like, look past, like, the mundane.
Yeah.
And see kind of an elevated view of, like, why rules exist.
Exactly. And I think, like, I think the question you were asking was in this series of, like, okay, if everybody's in the highest stage, that could lead to, say, like, anarchism.
Yeah.
But I think the reason that stage exists is of the opposite situation, where you live in, like, maybe a fascist, like, state where the rules are not in your favor and the rules are evil or unjust. Yeah. It allows you to break out of that and do what you believe is right. And it creates a framework for you to not just follow the rules for the sake of following the rules.
Do you think that if you'd stayed in swimming, that would have really changed the trajectory of your entire life? Or, like, do you think you'd probably, like, still be in the same spot?
100% stayed in the same spot. Like, 100%.
Yeah, like, I'm not saying...
I think the reason I regret it is because, like, I surrendered something. I surrendered something that was completely unrighteous, that I had I should have held on to, and I surrendered it to somebody that took that from me. And that is what I regret, was giving that over.
So it's less about the swimming and more about the idea that like someone took something from you when they had no right to.
Yeah, exactly.
That's solid. It's like, I always think about how you can like take regrets and like look forward with like that knowledge of like, how does this benefit my life now? Because like looking back can only give you so much, and it's like the history is done. It's like it's easy to wallow in like bad feelings and like, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that. But like, I think the point of regrets is to like take them and look forward into your future and be like, how am I not going to let this happen again?
Yeah. Do you have any situations like that you can think of? What are some of your biggest regrets?
So I definitely regret going to college. And I know that's like a really, like a lot of people would say the opposite of that. But like, I really gained nothing from my time in college. I entered college very immature, as an immature individual, and I exited college as a very immature person. And it took me, so like I went to college, graduated, immediately started working in a job that I did not like. And then I went to work for my dad's company in a job that I did not like. And then through a series of like random events, I ended up leaving that job and eventually like waiting tables to like just pay the bills while I figured out what I was doing next. And it turned out that I was like really good at waiting tables, to the point where I was making more money as a waiter than I ever did in my corporate America job. And so like, I regret just like, if I could do it again, I would have just gone straight to waiting tables. Because as an 18-year-old, I would have been clearing like $60,000 a year.
Which is a lot of, well, that's a lot of money in general, but like also like as an 18-year-old, that's...
Yeah.
Like, if you lived with your parents, like, all that $60K is just going straight to you.
Frank wouldn't have let me stay living with him. There was no, like, that's my dad, Frank. But, like, I just wish that, like, because it was less about the money. Like, yes, I would have been making more money sooner. But, like, waiting tables, one, introduced me to, like, more walks of life, gave me a broader perspective on, like, humanity. Because I was just running into, like, different people every day. From like different walks of life, different socioeconomic classes, and just like getting to interact with all of those people was really good for me. And also like working with just people, very, very different people outside of like my small, at the time, like Christian bubble. Like that was all very similar set of people. And then that got me introduced to working with a whole bunch of different people. And it was just a very humbling job. Of like, sometimes you got it right and sometimes you got it wrong, and sometimes like, you know, your boss just yelled at you and stuff like that. But like, I gained a broader understanding, like significantly broader understanding that I did in my 4 years of college. And so it was like, and it was free. It was like a free education that I received as a server.
But you also got paid.
And I also got paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
And like, yes, towards the end of it, I was really burned out. But that was because I didn't know that I just needed to be taking time off. Like, in that 5 years that I was waiting tables, I don't think I really ever took more than, like, a couple days off at a time. And so, like, I regret not, like... Because I was just in that grind. And I wasn't putting aside any money. I was just, like, living day to day and, like, partying and, like, really just enjoying life, but not setting aside anything for the future. Mm-hmm. So if I'd done that, I could have taken time off, and I could have gone on vacations, and I could have gone and seen the world. And so, like, I just regret not having the foresight into being like, you could make this a career long term. And also, I just had this thought of like, and it was like looking down upon myself, like when I was in that stage of life of like, you're just a server, you're just a bartender. And it's like, but that's not, like, looking back, it's like, my occupation was not who I am at all. And so, like, I didn't get that when I was in it.
You're a human being, not a human doing.
Right, exactly. And like, I just didn't think that I could be a server and a bartender for like, for a career. And like, you know, I eventually went on to like be a front of house manager at a fine dining establishment. And I ran, like, I was the general manager at a bar. So it's like, all of these things were like pathways to a real career. And I got out of them mostly because, I mean, I got out of that life because I was dating someone who I eventually married who was not in that life. So it's like, I wanted to be able to spend more time with her, which is great. And I'm really happy that I got out of it. But it just like, in hindsight, I should have been more grateful and more happy with where I was at. And I just wasn't. I just thought this was a stepping stone on the next thing. And so like, it took all of that and going through all of that to like come out on the other side of like, with gaining that broader understanding about myself. And I was just such a dick. I really was like, I'm glad we're friends, and I'm glad like you weathered all of that. Yeah. Like the before me being as a server and like after. But like, I just look back and like, I was kind of an asshole to a lot of people because I thought I was smarter than them and therefore I could get away with stuff. But that was just like not a great, I wasn't always a nice person. And I would say it's still like, you know, I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but like, yeah, and that's a tough thing to think about. It's like, I've come a long way, but like at the time I was kind of a jackass a lot of the times. So that's probably I've got a couple other ones, and if you've got one, like we can go to you and then come back to me. But
no, I was just thinking, like, as you were talking through that, it's like kind of funny how we often look back on our problems with nostalgia. Like you totally just did that.
Yeah,
you're like, man, life fucking sucked, and I miss it.
Yeah,
like it's like how can you apply that wisdom today? Like I feel like honestly, if you just like looked at yourself in the mirror and that was like one of your 20 daily affirmations.
You have 20 daily affirmations?
You don't?
I have 0.
Yeah, every day. I just doop, 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 doop.
Is this
just tack that on.
Is this in the morning when you first wake up?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I've got a routine.
What is your routine?
So wake up, take all my supplements, I get my fizzy water, jump in the shower, take a cold shower, because that one, what's that scientist guy name?
Bill?
No.
Nye?
No.
I don't know.
Starts with an H.
Do you have a beard?
Yeah.
Herbert
Heimel.
I don't know.
Huber. Why can I not think of him? He's gone out of vogue lately.
Yeah, he said some pretty sketchy stuff.
Yeah, but that guy told me that taking cold showers was good for me, so I do that. And then I dance naked while listening to typically like some metal or 80s music or anime, and then I just like think about all the things I'm grateful for. I remind myself to be a kind human. I look at a little picture of myself as an 8-year-old boy flexing muscles, and I've got a little like post-it note that says, "Don't let him down," because I don't want to let my like inner child down. I feel like honestly one of my greatest affirmations is just thinking back at Child Daniel and like asking him like, would Child Daniel be proud of who I am today? Like, would Child Daniel be like excited to become who I am today? And that's kind of that's the framework of which I start my day a lot of the days. And sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're not that person. Sometimes you're like, I took a 4-hour nap. Sometimes not a single productivity was done today.
I mean, I get that, but like, man, my mornings are such the opposite.
Yeah.
Like my alarm clock, I work from home, so I have to be at my desk at like 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And like my alarm clock will go off at like 8:55, and I like roll out of bed.
Been there.
Yeah. Get my cup of coffee, and I'm like sitting down at my desk like about 9 o'clock, you know. And like I drink my cup of coffee and I go through all my emails, and like that's how I start my day every day. And then just like honestly kind of just like white knuckle it through like till lunch. And then get into like my day, and I'm very productive for like 4 hours. And then, you know, it's just hard. I don't think we're supposed to be at 100% for 8 hours.
Yeah. And I also think too that like when you look back at like how the work, like the 40-hour work week evolved, like and how that came to be, like jobs were significantly different.
Yeah.
Back then, like it was like you're on your feet, and in a way that's physically taxing.
Mm-hmm.
But you and I have both had jobs where we're on our feet, and you and I have both had shifts more often than not where we're tired or exhausted, but it's like I could pull a double.
Yeah.
Like I could work more for more money.
Right.
Like I could like.
That's the key though. Working more for more money.
Yeah.
Like that made being a server really easy because like I remember like my bosses were like, hey, like you've got 30 minutes to take your break. Yeah. And I would literally eat my food as fast as I physically could and then go back on the clock.
Exactly.
Because like they're like, why aren't you taking your break? It's like because I'm not getting paid.
Yeah.
If I'm on my break.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so I was willing to hustle, and that's maybe why I burned myself out in serving because I just like was always at 100%.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder like how the salary, like the introduction of a salary impacted all of that, because like when you're hourly, it just like you want to work more, great. You want overtime, great. I know a lot of people that make a ton of money strictly by like manipulating overtime,
right?
Essentially. And that's great for them, but it is not great when you're in a salary.
No, because like, I mean, I think we've all been there of like, every once in a while you got to pull those crazy hours to get, I mean, because like at the end of the day, like I want to do a good job for my company.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is just like self-motivated. But I think I think it's just hard because like you don't reap any benefits in the short term. Like you may, like your boss may notice, and may is like the critical word there, and it may impact like a bonus or a promotion in the future, but like you have no guarantee that going above and beyond in a salaried position is going to reap you any benefits.
Whereas hourly, you get overtime.
And like if you're in like like you're in a waiting tables or like bartending situation, like because you were a tipped employee, like every additional table, every additional pair of guests that you interact with is money in your pocket.
Yeah, or even like going above and beyond for a table, like that nets you more immediate feedback. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I struggle with that sometimes often. Like just like being in like complex sales, like for software, it's like there were weeks and sometimes months where you're like, man, I don't know if anything I did today had impact. And that was the most defeating thought ever, was just like, I don't know if I had a win today. Because like when you're only closing 5 to 10 deals a year in like enterprise SaaS, it's just like you will go weeks and months without closing anything. Right. And also like most of your job is just based on mitigating failure. And I remember back in the early days of my sales career, just like dreaming of a job where even in a salaried position, like as a designer or a project manager or some job where you could, like, because of your high skill set that you're being paid money for, like you could go in and you'd be like, okay, I know at the end of this 8 hours what a successful day looks like, and I know the impact I'm going to have. Maybe even not at the end of the day, but like at the end of a week. Yeah. Like for me, that was never a thing. And maybe it was by like KPIs and metrics, but like
the sale is the thing that like really is the success or the failure of your job.
Yeah, because if I make 100 cold calls in a week, my company would say that's successful work. But like I didn't open a single deal, I didn't close a single deal. Yeah. To me, that feels like failure. Oof. And there's no direct benefit to me doing those things. So to me, that's a bad metric. Like, I don't agree with that.
So refocusing us back on the original topic of like, do you have another thing that you could look back on your life and be like, I really regret this?
Yeah, I do. We'll go there. So I regret, I got married at 24. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think I regret getting married at a young age, and I'm now divorced. Right. I regret, buying into purity culture of the church that I was attending at the time. And I regret, my wife and I, when we were dating, we did not have sex at all.
Yeah, I remember you sleeping on the couch in our living room. Yeah. And like she would be like sleeping in y'all's bedroom.
Yeah, like if we for whatever reason had to stay over, like logistically,
Yeah.
we'd have to stay in separate rooms, and even that was like not the thing to do.
Yeah.
It was like, and we tried to make that never a reality.
Hmm.
And we did that for like between dating and being engaged, it was almost 2 years before we were married.
Yeah.
And the reason I regret that is because we didn't know if we were sexually compatible. Like we didn't.
Right.
Yeah, like.
Because I think the lie the church tells you, and like full disclosure, you're in the process of like deconstructing out of Christianity,
Yes.
and I did that like a decade ago.
Yeah.
And so like we're no longer in that culture, but like we know, like we grew up in the church, we went to the same church, and like I think the lie that the church tells you is like every man is sexually compatible with every woman.
And not even that, but there are people that I was just watching the TikTok the other day. There are people that will say the Lord will make you sexually compatible with your spouse.
Just like the invisible hand inserting the penis into the vagina.
Yeah, it's like, what? Where's that from in the Bible?
Yeah, exactly.
Like where? Yeah, and we thought it was good because so the reason the church says that and promotes that is because they call this thing. They call it sex glue. Like when you're having sex with
sex glue.
Yeah, they legit from the stage would call it sex glue, and they said that sex creates this emotional bonding, in which it does. But they would say that you are more likely to stay in a bad relationship if you're having sex than if you're not having sex. And so, for example, like if you're dating someone and you're not having sex and you're starting to see red flags come up. It's easier to detach.
To see those red flags is what their point is.
Yeah, that's what their point is. I mean, and the thing is, though, like, I have had sex with women and broken up with them because of those red flags, and I have had sex and been in relationships with women where they have broken up with me because of red flags. So, to me, like, the real world application of that was null and void, and I was promised that I was going to be having great sex in my marriage. And like, I chose to look past red flags while dating because I thought that sex would fix that.
Right.
Because there was a critical element of a organic, like biological, natural relationship, healthy relationship between a man and a woman that did not form and was not there.
Is that like Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yeah, correct. Like a third of what makes up a great relationship was gone.
Right.
And I just thought that, like, okay, when that gap gets filled, everything else would become easier, and it did not. But
you weren't filling her gap
because we not compatible at all for a long time. We worked through that eventually, but I think.
So do you think that if you had been having sex with her, you would have broken up before you got married?
Correct. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. And also
because you guys just didn't like mesh.
Or the other situation is we developed a stronger initial connection that was long lasting because we never had truly romantic feelings of deep-seated love for one another because our marriage was all about logistics and paperwork, and like on paper, like we were a power couple.
Oh, for sure.
And there was no like I adore you, I am in love with you, like I only ever want what's best for you. It's like, no, like I'm with you because you're a safe option, because you, like we both love Jesus more together, and like that's all that the church told us that we need to know in order to like be fruitful and multiply. And for me, it's like I didn't have we both, for both of us, never had that connection binding us together. And so the church was like, hey, one of the most important parts of a relationship, I want you to start the foundation of your relationship without it. And it's like you're literally being set up to fail. It's like building the foundation of a house on like wet, lumpy grass, or like super dry, brittle, like soil. That's better. That's the more appropriate one. Just like dry, flaky dirt.
I don't think I'd want
and then
grass either.
Building like a carbon fiber or like Kevlar house on top of that. It's like, no, like, yeah, the Kevlar is super strong, but that bitch's gonna fall and collapse on itself with the foundation. Like that's what it was.
You have an interesting take on cohabitating.
Yeah.
That I think is like really like different from a lot of people. Can you talk to me about that a little bit?
Yeah. Okay. So on cohabitation, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I have observed lately in my friends and my family and a lot of people around me through various anecdotes. So it's all anecdotal, but
Sure.
I've noticed that.
Disclaimer: we are not scientists. We're not actually all that smart.
But like, there are people that I meet, and I thought it was really curious. But they're like, yeah, when we were dating, like when you know, and like all that stuff, and like we kind of like accidentally moved in together. That's always the key word. Yeah, you are one of those anecdotes, but it's like. It's always accidentally. It's like we accidentally moved in together in like the first month of dating.
Yeah.
And we just stayed living together, and now
we're married.
Many years later, yeah, we're married, or we're in really happy relationships, really supportive, loving relationships. And I'm like, okay, I think that could be the case because that is the foundation of your relationship was built on cohabitation, sexual connection, emotional intimacy, vulnerability. Like it allowed connected times. It allowed pathways for you to build a more fruitful and healthy relationship all up at the front, and that defines the trajectory of the relationship overall. Whereas me, in my relationship, it was very brittle. It was built on no cohabitation. It was our relationship that I built with another human being was based like this.
Right.
It was like love at arm's length. And so all of a sudden you get married and it's the complete opposite. And now you are actually in a fundamentally different relationship.
Because you're cohabitating.
Yeah, because you're now cohabitating and you're now having sex. This is like assuming you're abstinent and purity culture and all that jazz. Sure. Like, and then you get married, you're cohabitating and you're having sex, and that fundamentally is not what your relationship is built upon. And I know this to be true, and you should know this too, it wasn't my case, but there are married couples out there that they don't have sex often. I mean, I don't know why I say that like a profound fact, but I mean like because of this, they only have sex like twice a year because their relationship for years was built around not having sex.
And so that's just kind of their default setting.
Correct. Yeah. And like cohabitating, it's like you build really big struggles, and like cohabitating is hard and difficult. Whereas like if you do mesh and you cohabitate early on, it's like the relationship learns and grows itself around learning how to live together. And you can either take that or leave it. But like if you're able to continue on, like ultimately I believe the outcome of that relationship is going to be much healthier than a relationship that was built upon not doing those things and all of a sudden having to switch and adapt and learn those things.
And I think an element of that is like it is hard to live with someone.
Yeah.
And like you and I lived together for
4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. Jinx. And it took a solid 3 years of us living together.
Yeah.
To like really figure out how to live together.
Yeah.
And like that fourth year, it was easy. Easy. Like super, like we had everything. We had bills down. We had like how to clean the house down. Like
hangout time, how to share the TV.
How to be apart, how to give each other space. Like all sorts of things that like, it just takes time. And like me and my wife, we've been married since last October. No. 2 Octobers ago?
Yeah, 2 Octobers ago.
We're coming up on our 2-year wedding anniversary?
Yeah, you are.
That doesn't sound right.
That sounds right.
Is it 2 years?
Yeah. Why do I know this?
I don't know. You weren't even there.
We're actually just going to refute everything we've talked about.
No, but she moved in. Like we started dating in February. And like by April or May of that year, we were living together.
Yeah.
And it was really hard at first to like, I think everyone goes to that. It was just like, you're now having to live with this new person. And like Hannah has like all the hobbies that require like a crap ton of space. Like leatherworking, sewing, knitting, weaving, spinning of yarn. Like, she's definitely like, and so like,
it's like totes on totes on totes on totes.
Exactly. And like, I just remember coming home one day and my entire living room was covered in fabric. And I'm just like, and I'm very clean.
Yeah.
And very tidy and very organized. And that was like a really like hard thing for us to like get over. And literally what it amounted to is just, we were living in not enough square footage.
Yeah.
And like, so I did not think I was going to get married before I met her. And like literally we just like love at first sight, fell in love, got married. Like we were married on October 11th of this same year that we met. So we only knew each other for 10 months.
Dang.
And not even like a full 10 months.
Wow.
And like is literally the perfect person for me. Not to say that we don't have our issues and struggle. Yeah. I mean, like, every relationship has issues and stuff like that. But like it took me like...
Yeah, you've had like 2 in the last 2 years. I was running like 4 or 5 per week.
Per week, yeah. But like it just took us like moving to a bigger house.
Yeah.
And so like we were in 500 square feet when we started dating and got married, and now we're living in 2,500 square feet. Yeah. And the solution to that problem was she just has the basement. Like she has the entire basement to do whatever she wants with all of her crafty stuff. And I just close that door and I don't go down there.
You gave her a man cave.
I gave her a man cave.
Wow.
It's a Hannah cave.
That's amazing.
And like it solved all of our issues with like the cleanliness thing, because like it can be literally as messy as it wants to be down there, and I just close the door and I don't have to look at it. And like literally, and it just takes
Men
like...
truly are masters of compartmentalization, aren't we?
I am, you're not.
I think so.
We talked at length the other day about how you feel all of your feelings all at the same time, which is why you can't like watch or indulge in like scary media, because it makes your entire world like...
Yeah, that's true. My emotional state goes corrupt.
Yeah. Okay,
so back to what we were talking about though. Like you just closed the door. Hannah, you got your own space.
Yeah, and so like that, it just makes it so easy for like her to be messy, because that's her default setting. Yeah. And mine is to be clean. And like I've had to give up the idea of like my house is going to be neat and tidy because I love my wife.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's a tiny little burden to bear.
Yeah.
That I won't always have a clean house. And it's like, and that's fine. And I love her. That. So I think my regret, I dated this girl that I eventually got engaged to. It was not Hannah, obviously. But like there were so many red flags that I just looked past, because like this was the stage of life that I was supposed to be in. Yeah. Like I was in my early 20s, and like again in like Christian conservative culture, you just hear about how like you're supposed to go to college. By junior year of college, you're supposed to have found the one, and then date for a couple of years, and then as soon as you graduate, you're supposed to get married. Mm-hmm. And I was not on that timeline trajectory. Like I hadn't found anyone that I wanted to be with. But then I graduated from college, moved back to Dallas, and then started dating Lexi like, 6 months?
Yeah.
After I was back in Dallas.
Yeah.
And she was this like driven, career-oriented woman, and that was not me. And she had a very, very crazy family.
Objectively.
Yeah. And like, and it just, rough. And there was just so many things that I should have been like, no, I need to get out of this. Yeah. And likewise for her. I feel like there were so many red flags with me.
Really? Tell me more.
Like, I just, like, she wanted to have, it was so weird because, like, at the beginning of our relationship, she was not, like, into the church. Like, she would have said that she was spiritual, but really? Not, yeah.
What?
And then, like, yeah. And then, like, 8 months in, she was, like, a born-again Christian.
Yes. I remember that.
And I remember her being like, she's like, I want to stop having sex. I want to like go back to like just being like monogamous. And it was really funny. Not monogamous. That's not the right word. That would be
celibate.
Celibate. Yeah.
Abstinent.
Yeah. And it was so funny. The one time she like gave Katie, your ex-wife, props was like, she was like, I'm just so proud of Katie and Dan for not having sex before marriage. I think that's so cool and so strong. And that's the only time she ever gave Katie like a passing like good comment. And it just stuck in my brain. But like there were like, I didn't want that. I was like, no, like we need to keep having sex. It's like a foundational pillar of our relationship.
Yeah.
And like there was, and like I was, and she was all like big into like family, and like we had to go to her parents or her mom's house every Sunday night for family dinner. And I was like, I wasn't about that. Like, so
Why weren't you about that?
Because I just didn't like her family.
Which is the red flag. Right?
Which is the red flag for Lexi.
Yeah.
Like, she should have seen that and been like, no, you're not right for me either.
Yeah.
Like, we just weren't right for each other. But because, like, we were in this culture that said, like, you date, if you hit a certain month milestone, like 18 months, whatever, then you get engaged, and then you're engaged for, like, 6 more after that, and then you get married.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I think marriage is just, like, like, you should get married when you've checked all the boxes, and you're like, I'm just ready to take this to the, like, there's no taking it to the next level. It's like we're at that level and we're just confirming amongst ourselves that we agree.
That's exactly how I think about marriage now too. And it's exactly how I thought about marriage when I was going through the process of getting married. Was like, this is the next evolution of the relationship. It was like, this is the next stage. This is what's next for us. And like now looking back, it's like I feel like I would have waited a lot longer while having sex and living together. Like, I would have waited a lot longer
if you were able to do those things.
Yeah, if I were able to do those things. And I would have waited a lot longer to be like, okay, now marriage is a confirmation of what already exists. Yeah. And I want to show my commitment to that by being partnered with you for the rest of my life. Yeah. And that's what marriage to me should be.
Yeah, I agree. And like, the crazy thing is, like, the church pushes you to have these, like, really quick relationships. And, like, yeah, I had a very quick relationship to get to married. But, like, I am also at a very different life stage than, like, a lot. Like, I would never advocate for someone to get married after, like, knowing someone for 10 months if they were in their early 20s. Never.
Because you don't even know who you are.
Not a clue. Yeah. You have no idea who you are.
No.
Between 20, I would say between 20 and 25, you should never, honestly, I don't think you should date.
Oof. I would argue that trying to pursue women in a relationship like that is really just an affirmation of your own insecurities and chasing that.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah. But like, if I was able to do it all over again, because I was so fixated on female affection.
Genitalia. What?
My entire life.
Yeah, same.
Like, I was the flirtiest high school kid you have ever met, and like, I just wish that I could go back in time and be like, no, like, you need to be focusing on your friendships with these people that are going to be with you. Because you and I met, and like, I was a sophomore in high school, and you were
like in 8th grade.
Yeah. And like, I think we have a really good relationship, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, I wish we had spent more time together. Like,
we already spent a lot of
but there was
together.
Room for more.
There was room for more. Like that one time you ditched me for Julia to make out with her, and you didn't choose your friends. At least you learned that one at a young age of 16.
I was 18.
You were 18?
I was 18.
God.
Julie Gibbons.
Duh. I remember looking at my phone, waiting for a text or a call from you. Zach's gonna pick me up soon. I just
have this mental image of you standing on the curb, just like, yeah, looking sad.
I had nothing else going for me.
Yeah,
just my best friend Zach's gonna pick me up tonight. And we're gonna have a lot of fun.
You either texted or called me, and I was on the date with her, and I was like, I'm sorry.
You know what's funny? I was in such a like weird dystopian family era that, like, when you told me and you let me down, I was like, I guess that's okay. Like, that's my life. And then you told me how bad you felt about it, and I was like,
years later, I told you how bad I felt about it.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh well, I'm just gonna lean into this then.
I literally think about that like 4 times a year.
Yeah, when you told me that actually blew my mind. I was like, man, Zach has a big heart.
Yeah, that was the wrong move. But like, I had never kissed a girl.
Really?
You knew that.
I thought you were God. I thought you were like Dionysus. Like, I think I just looked up to you so much back then.
Yeah, like but like, that was part of like the reason I waited till I was 18 to kiss someone. Was like just wrapped up in all of this like purity culture that I didn't quite understand. And I'm not like bashing Christians or the church. I just don't think they think about why they're doing the things they are.
I agree. Yeah. And I also think that they like a lot of your human nature biologically is good, and we evolved to be that way.
Yeah.
And the church will tell you that's wrong. Or like for example, like wanting to have sex with women or wanting to kiss a girl, wanting to date a girl, like that is a very healthy, normal, appropriate response for a teenage girl and boy to have. But the church would tell you that that's wrong and corrupt. And
the shitty thing about the purity culture of the church is it comes from like the like near apocalyptic reading of early Christianity. Because like early Christianity, they all thought they were going to be alive for the next couple of years, and then Jesus was going to come back. And so that's why Paul wrote in the gospel, or not his epistles, of like, if you can remain celibate, that's probably for the best. Because that had, and in that context of like, Jesus will be returning in the next like 10 to 15 years, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Like, I'm not knocking that, but like the fact that he did not come back, and we're still applying this purity culture to to conservative Southern Baptist Christians and Catholic priests. Like, purity culture does so many negative things for culture, not just like all of it. Because like if you had priests, if priests were able to marry, I don't think the pedophilic like rampancy would go away completely.
But it would have helped.
But I think it would legitimately help. Like, I think a lot of those priests just don't have an outlet for their sexual energy, and because they're in positions of authority, they use that to then manipulate and target people that don't have power. Yeah,
it's literally like, hey, let's take all the worst ingredients and put them together.
Exactly.
Like hey, let's take a man in a super powerful position and let's take away something really, really important from that person and put him in a position to get that through evil means.
And with limited supervision, because
limited supervision at the top. Like literally that's a concoction for bad situations. Yeah. It's like, going back to this, God, this should be like a deconstruction podcast. Going back to that, it's like the church, like what you said earlier, like Christians are taught to like do things without really critically thinking about them. I think also like the church puts weird meaning on things in your brain, on things that you can't explain, and they replace that with God. They put that on God. Like people will say like, oh, I'm really convicted that I watched porn and you shouldn't watch porn, and I feel really bad and evil about that, and I'm going to shame myself and shame others for that.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, you're not convicted. That's your anxiety. Maybe that's the part of your brain you don't understand, and you can't be like, I'm going to put a part of my brain that I don't understand, and I'm going to say that that's
in a box
God.
And label it God, and just let that box come open sometimes and talk.
Yeah, it's like any weird feelings you have or weird thoughts you have or that voice talking to you in your head, like everybody's got that, but like that ain't God, bro. Like that, like especially when you're a teenager with all your hormones. Like,
yeah, I mean and the opposite of that existed. Like, I remember feeling so guilty and so like less than because I didn't hear the voice of God in my head. I was like,
the voice of God,
right? Yeah. It's like, am I doing this wrong? Am I not I'm not a true believer? Like, and I remember reaching out to a mutual friend of ours, and I'm not gonna say it because it would hurt his feelings. Like, he was legitimately trying to give good advice, but like he was just like, have you prayed about it? And I was like, fuck off. Like, this is not the advice that I need from you right now. I need like real substantive advice.
Yeah.
And I just remember when I finally like started the process of deconstructing when I was a senior in college, because I was like, it was because of the major I picked. It was like, I have a degree in sociology with an emphasis on archaeology and anthropology in Near Eastern, like that region. So like,
I've never heard the tail end of that. Wow, I thought you just studied sociology.
No, it was like,
that's way cooler. You gotta lead off with that like, from here on out. Like you sound like a professor.
Yeah, it was like mostly talking about like Egypt and Israel and Jordan and Syria, like that whole region.
Wow, you're like Wonder Woman's husband.
But like the more I studied about like the time period in which the Bible was written, I was like, I've been lied to for a lot of my like, and like we can go into like the nitty gritty of like the things that really made me question. Yeah, another time. But like, it just made me feel awful that like I wasn't being connected to like something that I was being told that I should have been.
Yeah, it was almost like you wanted to have access to something that you saw other people's having access to, and no one could connect the dots as to why you didn't have that.
Yeah. And no one could provide me with a good answer as to like why I didn't hear the voice of God in my head. And it's because he wasn't talking to anyone. Go ahead.
Okay, I had this conversation today, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And you ever, so I, having proclaimed to others that, like, man, I'm feeling the Spirit. Like, I heard God today. He said this, like, being one of those, like, and trying to connect the dots between, like, people that do or don't. I was talking to somebody today, and they were like, yeah, like, I just never felt the Spirit. I never felt that connection. I never heard God or felt connected to God. Like, and people told me to just wait for it.
Sure.
And I'm like, man, you know what? Like, having been on both sides of that, have you ever listened to a really fucking good song that just gave you the chills, made your hair stand up, made you feel perspective, like made you feel things positively, like there was hope beyond, like,
yeah, for sure.
And you were almost like got a body high?
Yeah, all the time.
Bro, that's dopamine, because you were vibing to whatever was going through your ear holes, and that is the same thing that goes on in Benny Hinn's church when people fucking do backflips and do all the squiggly spaghetti shit and do everything and fly back and forth because the Spirit's telling them to do it. Yeah, it's like when people are like, I heard God, or I felt the Spirit during that worship service, like they were vibing, they were connecting emotionally to a higher power, like in their own mind, that was real for them, and that gave them this egregious amount of dopamine, like, and that gave them feelings that they normally don't have, but you sometimes feel when you're doing other things too. And it's like, that's what that was to me, and I'm sure that's what it is for everyone else. And so it's like, maybe you weren't hearing God, man. Maybe your body was just doing its thing.
And and it's easier to lean into that kind of stuff when you have a group of people all leaning in together. Like, because then it doesn't feel weird.
Correct.
So like, if you were thinking, like, my brother invited me to church like a month and a half ago, and I was like, yeah, I'll go because I love my brother.
Yeah.
Like, my brother is like one of
I did the same thing with my sister.
Yeah. Like, and Mark doesn't mean anything. Like, he just wants me to feel included, which at the end of the day, like, good on him.
Love that.
Yeah, he's just, and there are Christians that I know that if like all of them were like Jason,
I fucking love Jason.
And if all of them were like John Lilly,
love John
and
Lilly.
all of them were like my brother, like I would probably still be a Christian.
Yeah,
but they're not all, because
nope.
The fucked up thing about it is like we're all human and we all like grab power wherever we can, and if you're a good person that's grabbing that power, then it's gonna be okay. But if you're a person that's like morally corrupt and then like are using your power to just feel good about yourself, like I think that's like 99% of all my issues with the church is just like humans grabbing power to then exert their will on others.
Correct. And that was my big issue with the church too, and ultimately why I left was I always had this gnawing feeling in my stomach of exclusion, of there is an us versus them when it comes to me and other people that are non-believers.
Right.
And I hated that. Whether like,
and even like sex within the believer communities, like the gay portion of like the church, they still had an axe to grind.
Yeah.
Against those people, and like that's a big reason that I left too.
Exactly.
Because I really came full circle on it with like the idea of like we are born with the sexuality that we have.
Yeah. And
so like if God is like creating us, and that's like a fundamental principle of like conservative Christianity. Well, probably most Christianity.
Yeah.
It's like, why would he then create us to have a sexual desire that is inherently sinful?
Yeah.
It's like that just didn't jive with anything that like. Because so like what that is like conservative Christians being like, ew, icky.
Yeah.
They get the icky feeling towards gay people.
Yeah.
And then they legislate that into their belief system.
I completely agree that their big beef is just getting the ick towards like LGBTQ. Like that's it. Like, and they use scripture to justify it.
And then, I just remember making the point of someone is like, if we can agree that like you were born with a sexuality that you have, that's like saying that a group of people with a different skin color should be excluded from loving in general, because black people can't change the fact that they're black, just in the way that gay people can't change the fact that they're gay.
Correct.
And so therefore, like, you're saying that group is evil, then they should all be evil. Like, you're just picking the thing that makes you feel the ick and like making sure that that's not a thing that they can do.
Yeah, and
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and the biggest defense the church would give you against that, and I hated hearing this, and it always gave me the ick, was like listening to my pastor of a megachurch in Dallas saying everybody has their own sin struggle. I struggle with pornography, and you struggle with homosexuality. We both are in this fight together, my brother. And I'm like, yeah, but you're in a loving marriage and have had 6 kids and get to fuck your wife every night if you wanted to. That is a completely different situation than being gay and or like watching like pornography. Like those are completely different universes. Mm-hmm. Not even planets, like universes apart from each other. Yeah. Like to draw that juxtaposition, that comparison between the two makes no sense, and you have no right to do that whatsoever. To say like, hey, like if I watch porn, I'm gonna get my hand slapped by my community, but if you're gay, we're gonna excommunicate you and ban you from this place. Like if you get married or if you have sex with another person of the same sex, it's like you're now gone forever, and you have to fight that literally every hour of the day in your own attraction to other people. Whereas I might get the itch to watch porn a couple times a week. Like completely different realms of reality.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I think you and I agree wholeheartedly 100% on this topic of just like,
it's just not fair. Like that is not a fair comparison at all.
Yeah, and going back to what I literally just think conservative Christians are like, ew, 2 dudes kissing.
I've heard them say that. Yeah, heard them say that. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So I think that's like all the ground that we can cover on. I love the tangential nature of this conversation.
Yeah.
Of like, it started here and we just like continued to talk about the different things that are connected to it tangentially.
Yeah, we did. We just kind of kept flowing.
So cool.
We didn't even go back to the drawing board.
We need to get our wheel.
Yeah, right there. Yeah. Are we wrapping up?
I think we're wrapping up. I think we're going to be talking in general about topics like this moving forward for sure. And I think that we have an opportunity to engage with y'all about like, what do you want us to speak about? Because like the key takeaway from this podcast is just like 2 best friends who don't always agree on things, but always like respect each other in their opinions. So it's like, I would love to hear feedback of like very general topics that we can just start here, and you're going to hear just our normal conversational flow around these topics. Yeah. And I think that's exactly where we need to be. So we're going to run it again next week.
See you next time.
Have a good day.